Hey everybody, we're doing something a little bit different today. I'm starting with a blank slate here, and I'm going to just be putting some thoughts down for a song. I have a basic chord progression in my head, at least. I think we'll see how it works out. But I want to go through and show you the process that I actually take when I'm making a new song. And this could be for any number of different styles. You'll notice one thing right off the bat, I'm not using a template, and I rarely do when making a new song just because I don't like having that template there, kind of putting things in place. I do have templates for various different tasks, but this is just not one of them. As far as setup goes, a couple things right off the bat. I have patch merging open right here. And with patch merging, it allows me to determine when I load up from my library what things pop in. I always turn off my sends. That way, for instance, if I were to pull open a piano, for instance, it doesn't bring all those annoying sends with reverbs and all of the other stuff. It literally just brings out the instrument and the effects, and if there's any MIDI effects on them, like that. So I have that always ready to go. Another thing I'm going to do right off the bat is make sure that my buffer size is at least 256 or below. I'm screen recording, so I need to keep it probably around 256, even though I'd prefer to go down lower. It just sometimes is a little glitchy when I'm doing the actual logic and screen capture at the same time. But I don't want this to be 512 or 1024. I'm going to be performing on MIDI, and so I want to make sure that there's even still a little bit more latency than I like because of the screen recording. But we're going to leave it there for now. Now I've got just the vintage electric piano pulled up, the default patch. But I'm actually going to start by just putting some drums down with a drummer track. Part of that for me is always adding in basic song form, because I am going to be using a song form for this. I don't need to have it all worked out, but I'm going to build the building blocks with an intro, verse, chorus, bridge. And this intro, I actually don't really want it to be full length like everything else. So I'll pull it down. And actually with this, because of the way this works, let's undo those real quick. It's easiest to do this with nothing else there, and then to add in the other ones. You can actually change the length, but it's a little tricky. Okay, once I have my basic arrangement in the with my arrangement track, my global track there, I'm going to do a new drummer track. And you'll see, because I have those, it automatically populates with each of the different versions, the different sections of the song. And they are different performances. I'm not saying I'm going to use this particular instrument or the drummer, but I'm going to come through and choose a different one. I'm really into some of the brushes, the brush versions, the brush kits that we have. So I'll change the Tyrell for a minute. You'll see it updates, still giving me a verse type pattern, a chorus, and a bridge type pattern. Okay, so that's like the core part of my chord progression, and I wasn't completely unhappy with that. I'm going to customize my control bar for 1 second, put on the capture recording. I wasn't expecting necessarily to use that in this case, but I like what I just played, so I'm going to put it on there. I'm going to come through. I do want to just, for this first few passes, anytime I add notes, there's nothing written in stone. None of these necessary to be the final performance, but I do like to, in that case, use quantization. I use smart quantize, especially with piano stuff, that still maintains some of the feel of notes being played at slightly different times, because like a hand on a keyboard, instead of putting them all exactly the same. And then it quantized the first note just a little bit late, so I went back and just moved those a little bit into line. Let's hear the beginning of the region one more time. And actually the latency is causing just a slight amount of performance issue there, but let's see if we can't just work around it. I'm going to quantize that as well. Delete some notes that are wrong. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, now I fixed some of those things. Let's just option click and copy that over. Now I do want to start panning a little bit, but the default is always the balance knob. So I'm going to switch that to stereo pan so that we're keeping the whole instrument there. And then at the end, let's just tidy up this whole little end section by pulling that out so it sustains the whole time. Okay, let's see. So we got bass, we have the keyboard part there. I do want some sort of moving synth type thing going on here. So let's add Alchemy for a minute and see if we can't find a patch that has a little bit of a motion element to it. There's some other ideas I have, but I think we'll start here. So rhythmic, synths, ambient or down tempo. Let's see, maybe warm. 22 presets. Let's see if any of them are any good. Okay, I think we're going to try this one first. Let's just start right at the beginning. And yeah, the latency from the screen recording is so horrible right now. Let's take one more listen to that. We'll just click on the top right hand corner with the little circle with the arrow, which is the loop function. And actually, we don't want to do that yet. The reason why is because we have that beginning section here. So let's use the scissor tool and clean that up. Now that'll be a better loop. Stereo pan again. Now, when I start adding synth and I have the other keyboard part, this particular bass does tend to get really swallowed up. One thing I do sometimes with that is spread it out a little bit. I love the stereo spread. I hope we get an updated version at some point. If you're not on headphones, this is really going to be better if you are on headphones to hear the difference. And one thing I do almost always when I'm doing this, I want it to be wider. I'll explain what it does in a second, but I also want to just put a correlation meter on this. I want to make sure it's staying in the positive so it doesn't cancel out if it's ever mono, just sum to mono. So you can see it's easy to do that. So all the frequencies here are split out. Anytime you see like a line on either side, so around 20 hertz, 50 hertz, 100, 200, 500, 1K, 2K, up to 5K, it's being panned if it's on the top half to the left and the bottom half to the right. I almost always invert the top half. It seems to give me a little bit better better phase relationship, I guess, better polarity. Now I'm using the Step Effects Driven Pulse preset. I just picked a random one, but I'm putting the mix closer to 50%, so that's just adding a little bit of motion to it. Just added a little bit of EQ to the drums so that they start cutting through. I don't mix too much, like over mix at this point, but I definitely start crafting the sounds to how I want them to sound all the way through. So I think we're starting to get a nice little section here. Let's listen one more time. So I'm starting to add more. I want to pull the faders down for everything just so we're not clipping or distorting. In the old analog days, we'd hook up the tape machine into our console and we'd start with everything at least around minus 6 dB on each of the faders just so we'd have enough room for everything as we were coming in. We do that less and less in digital, it feels like, but it's still important at some point to make sure you're giving yourself room so that everything can get louder and things if you want to push them up. So at some point this is going to happen anyway, but at some point if you do it like this in a really calculated way, you're going to be able to be prepared for things as they come. And I actually probably do want to add this reverb into that. The reverb in this case, even though I have the sends turned off, this came with the drummer track. And so there's a little bit, I don't even know right now if anything is coming on it. It's not. It's the bus is turned all the way to nothing, so. And then I like having one other instrument quite a bit. Let's see if I'm going to search for it. I like doing this dobro sound that we have. Kind of a cool sound from the Logic library. Let's see. Okay, so we'll save this one because I let it fall over to the next one. It gave me a take folder. Okay, a little editing to get the timing a little closer. I think this works. The truth is, I feel like this almost is more of the introduction than the verse. So what I really think is going to happen with the dobro, if we repeat this, it would come in, or we change it as a counter melody depending on what the melody is going to be. This could just be a sample for a melody. We could replace it with words and then add a counterpoint or a counter melody in that dobro part so that it's not just stepping on what the melody is doing the whole time. Okay, this is a good start, I think. I haven't ever heard this music before. It's not like I prepped this up in advance. I'm making this as we go. I had the chord progression, but that's it. I kind of like the direction we're heading in. last thing I'm going to do right now is actually add a reverb because I want to start hearing how this sounds a little bit. I typically don't add reverb this early in any production, except when I'm doing it like this with this one section. I want to make sure that the concept is going to work. And then I'll do that, but I may actually turn it off later as well. Let's go down bus 1. And of course, my favorite right now is Chromaverb. I love Chromaverb. It has a lot to offer. And, well, let's put it on. We're mellowing out the sound of that dobro a little bit. It is really clinky at the beginning of that attack. That's part of how a dobro sounds, so I don't want to change it too much. But I'm mellowing it down on the EQ for the actual dobro track itself. And then on the reverb, I pull down some of the reverb as well in the high frequencies. Okay, so this is as far as we're going to work on this in this video. So this was the first verse section. I think, depending on the response for this video, if we have enough interest, I will continue on in the next video with the chorus and the bridge, and then we'll do vocals and other parts of this. But I just am trying to think of new ways to showcase some of this process and how some of the features we have in Logic are used and why we might use them and when we can use them for creative things, but sometimes we actually use them for very specific tasks and technical reasons. So let me know if you like this, if you want to continue on with this song. Drop some information in the comments if you do or are interested, and I'll start working on the next section even if we don't use it, because I kind of like what we've got started here. Okay, that's it. I will see you in the next video.